Hi, this is John Hope Bryant. I am the founder and chairman and chief executive officer of Operation Hope. But today I'm just a citizen. I'm just an American. I'm just God's child, and please allow me to not acknowledge each of you individually as you come on. I'm going to express. I will promise you that I will respond to you at the end of the broadcast. I will come back and respond to each of you. I see you coming on. I see you commenting, but please allow me just to say this and please put this on your pages. Please share this. I've been waiting to say something because I wanted to be respectful to the family. I wanted to be respectful to all those experiencing pain. I didn't want to get in the middle of somebody needing to express themselves, and I wanted to reflect and think about what I thought was important for me to say that somebody else couldn't say or hasn't said that was important. Let me say what needs to be said first. My deep condolences to this family that has gone through this unspeakable pain that has been broadcast on television here and around the world. As a friend of mine, I talked to Dr. Bernice King earlier tonight and talked to so many heroes and sheroes of mine, and it's one of the great quotes that I remember from one of those conversations was that racism was not discovered or reignited, it's just been videotaped. That racism, which I don't normally go in this direction because I'm all about empowerment and over it, around it, through it. You want to get through and through your pain and just move on, acknowledging that racism is sort of like rain. It's either falling someplace or it's gathering. So you might as well get out an umbrella in a color you like and start strolling through it because it's not going to change, so you must. I'm all about resiliency and empowerment. That said, actually there was a White House texting me right there with some, I'm just pushing everybody to they're gonna have to think differently now and do more. Republicans, Democrats, blacks, whites, rich, poor. I'll get to that in a minute. But another friend of mine who I respect told me you cannot pee on my head and call it rain. If the guy in the park in New York City, the white lady, educated, progressive, I guess, who almost was practicing an attack by a black man and saying that to the police in a way that could have got that guy killed, and all he wanted her to do was put her dog on a leash. But she had such a sense of entitlement of being questioned, I guess, maybe by anybody, but she specifically described him as a black man, an African American, and felt repulsed, I guess, that he would dare speak to her, that she decided to tell on him to the police in a way that would put him at a disadvantage. That's just bad. That's just racism. This unspeakable disaster, this tragedy in Minneapolis is not only a death, it's murder. We've all seen the video. There's no excuse for it. The police officer stood on this guy's neck for 7 to 10 minutes. Maybe he didn't intend to kill him. I don't think he intended to kill him. I think he just didn't care, which is almost worse. I've always said that the issue today is not love or hate, it's radical indifference. The problem today is not that you hate somebody or you love somebody, is that you don't care what happens to them one way or the other. And so this is the death knell of a soul. Indifference is the death knell of the soul, and we are better than this. We're a better nation than this, and we're going to get through this, and rainbows only follow storms. You've heard me say that, and I'm saying that tonight. You cannot have a rainbow without a storm first. This is our storm. Coronavirus was part of this. This speaks to the additional pain that we should not be harboring right now. When people were sitting at home already frustrated, and this just lit a fuse, an unnecessary fuse. And so I apologize myself as God's child to this gentleman's family. He deserved better than this from this country. The rioting, Operation Hope was founded after a riot, the Rioting King riots in 1992. So let me speak to this. It is ridiculous for us. So the rioting needs to stop. I understand that, as Dr. King said, that rioting is that violence is the voice of the unseen and the unheard. I get it. I understand. And I think you should protest. Everybody, you should be out there protesting. You should be out there speaking your voice. And I love to see that it's black and white, red and brown, rich and poor, young and old. I love seeing everybody out here. This is what makes America, one of the things that makes America special. You should be out there protesting and giving your voice and saying this is unacceptable. But violence and looting of people who did nothing against you, hurting small business owners who are already in pain with COVID-19 is unacceptable. In many ways, we're just burning up our own communities that were already tore up in the first place. This is why I say you never make a decision from an emotional place. It's never a good decision. So we're winning the battle and losing the war when we do that. The rioting has to stop. In fact, I just saw 2 examples of rioting that were completely misplaced. Rioting, the defaming of CNN Center here in Atlanta. What did CNN do but try to cover this? Come on now. I understand that, well, what I understand it to be is just not thoughtful. No one's thinking about it. They're just acting and reacting. And the Freedmen's Bank building, I've gotten all kind of text messages that young white man defamed the Freedmen's Bank building by painting it. This is a building that I spent, and my team spent time and energy getting renamed in Washington, D.C., across the street from the White House. This is a bank chartered by Abraham Lincoln and run by Frederick Douglass, chartered to teach free slaves about money. This is the only building on the White House campus in the history of America in honor of former slaves. And this building was defamed tonight with spray paint because people were angry. Young white man. And I'm sure he didn't know. I'm sure he had no clue what he was doing. But he needs to know that was actually not even winning a battle. It's just losing everything. Now, I don't want to see white and black kids burning buildings up together. I want to see white and black kids building businesses up together. Because the best way to stop a bullet in the future is a job. What we need in these inner city, by the way, where this murder happened was a 500 credit score neighborhood. I checked the data. It's 530 credit score. The credit scores in the wealthy parts of Minneapolis are 750 credit score. And crime is almost non-existent, and things like this don't happen out there. This was a poor neighborhood, 500 credit score neighborhood. The problem here is poverty. At the end of the day, I can't get in your heart and change how you feel about me, but I can get in my heart and change how I feel about you, which is why I'm so passionate about empowerment. We don't need civil rights or civil rights. We need civil rights, the law, the social justice, the structure, the policy, and we need civil rights, which is jobs, economics, ownership, wealth creation. Because if Mr. Floyd was wealthy and white, this would have happened to him. Would not have happened to him. If he was wealthy and Hispanic and Jewish, this would not have happened to him. And if he was wealthy and black, probably in a different zip code, I might add, this would not have happened to him. It's never happened to somebody of wealth and resources. Racism happens all the time. Bias happens all the time, but not this kind of thing, because people know you can't get away with that. So I can't stop through civil rights how somebody feels about you, but I can make you more bulletproof. I can, no pun intended here, I don't mean little bullets. I mean, I can make you harder to hit, harder to hurt, because you have the ability to push back, and that people like the police and others will be much more cautious about attacking you, slamming you against a patrol car, killing you, because they are afraid of the repercussions, the economic and professional repercussions of them harming you. But when you're poor and you don't have a voice, and they don't think that you are a voter, and they don't think that you are a stakeholder, and they don't think you have a lawyer, and they don't think that you can push back, they write you off as poor. And what are you going to do about it? And this is the way, unfortunately, the poor get treated. The problem here is poverty at the end of the day. And we have got to attack this from all angles. I cannot stop racism. It's as old as Jesus. We got to keep working on this. My civil rights leaders, my social justice leaders. The government needs to keep working on this and putting bad people in a box and putting them in a box, literally prison, a box culturally, socially, saying the Klan and all these other things are not acceptable, and putting them literally in a box as in prison, as this police officer, soon formerly police officer, officially, as he hopefully gets convicted, literally needs to go in a box, meaning jail and then prison. And we got to carve out bad behavior from good behavior. But we also have to then carve out the aspirational part we have some control over, that allows us to have the police clearly understand they're there to protect and serve us, not to push on us and control us. And that is in an aspirational neighborhood. They don't do this in 700 credit score neighborhoods. They don't do this in neighborhoods with a tax base. They don't do this in neighborhood with the average property taxes $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 a year. They don't do this. It doesn't happen. It is only in poor 500 credit score neighborhoods. I've got the data to back up what I'm saying. So we have got to attack this from all angles. We need federal legislation and what I call a new Marshall Plan that is backed by Republicans and Democrats and Republicans, the executive branch, Congress, and the Senate. That is the most powerful piece of legislation since after World War II. We use the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe. We need to rebuild our inner cities. We need to rebuild rural America. We need to make sure the color is not white, black, red, brown, and yellow. It's green, as in the color of U.S. currency. We need to rebuild this country and come back up from nothing with all of us involved in the uplift. We need a massive movement of entrepreneurs, a massive movement of home ownership, and a massive movement of making sure that everybody has at least a 2-year education after high school, preferably a 4-year education in a skill that is marketable in the 21st century. A massive movement of internships, a massive movement of apprenticeships, a massive movement of financial literacy for all, a massive movement of educating mandatory police body cameras on every police officer, because we can't just trust them to do the right thing. We gotta police them as they're policing us to make sure they're doing the right thing, because even a bad apple can get in a good camp. I think most police officers are good people, but you can have somebody bad who's got some kind of a gripe, or who joined the part of the force because they actually are unhappy person and hurt people, and they can end up in the law enforcement with a badge on, and we need to make sure that that black and brown people are protected from these harmful people. And a body cam is very cheap insurance. It should be mandatory that every law enforcement officer has a body camera, so we can trust them as they're pulling us over on a dark street at 12 midnight alone, that we can trust them that the entire Justice Department is watching. We need to make sure that we are strengthening our civil rights statutes and strengthening our democracy as we do that, and strengthening our public policy as we do that, and strengthening our public support system as we do that. We also need to strengthen the access to opportunity side at scale, because ultimately that's going to strengthen our communities and allow us the resources and the voice, because people who own something vote, right? It's a circle. It's called enlightened self-interest. And people who have owned something take an interest in their community. They join block clubs. They join parent-teacher night. They have stronger nuclear families, husband and wife at home, or wherever you call a nuclear family. They spend time with their children. We need everybody in this country to have at least a high school education. Is no longer acceptable. This is nothing but a bifurcated economy. If we don't get beyond a high school education, you're gonna have a dual economy. You're gonna have, on the other side of COVID and for the foreseeable future, you're gonna have a economy of the investment class up here, who are college educated, who got a computer class, a financial literacy class, who are investing in the stock market, and they're going to continue to do like this. And you're going to have the hourly workers and those who are high school education and who are really educated in the economy of the past. You're going to have what's called an L-shaped recovery, which is a recession, which will feel like a depression, because these folks will not be able to get into here. And this will create a class disconnect, which is not good for America, and it's not good for the world. The Bible says a house divided cannot stand. We need a holistic vision for this country. We need a bold, audacious plan for the civil rights movement to layer on top of the effective civil rights movement. We need a new Marshall Plan that injects billions of dollars into infrastructure, billions of dollars into education, K through college, financial literacy in K through college, internships that gets you from college into a office suite, and apprenticeships that gets you from college into a marketable skill, a venture capital base that is publicly funded, that allows an investment in make sense businesses from minorities and those who are outside of Silicon Valley and who don't have access to the suites, they just have access to the streets. We need to make sure that the next time we find a brilliant guy like who has the brilliance of Steve Jobs, but who doesn't get the luck of the gene pool to end up in Silicon Valley, and he ends up in the south side of Chicago, he doesn't become a drug dealer because he doesn't have other alternatives. We got to make sure that we find gifts of brilliance wherever we discover gifts of brilliance wherever we find them, and we provide them with the opportunity for uplift. And what we're talking about is a hand up, not a handout. I'm not talking about a giveaway program for anybody. I'm talking about the James Brown version of affirmative action. Open the door, I'll get it myself. Poor people, struggling people, those who are left behind don't want a handout. They want a chance, a shot at the table. And unfortunately, all too often, until rioting or something like this despicable murder of George Floyd happens, that people don't feel they have a voice in this process. And then these riots happen, which again, I do not endorse at all. And these riots bring voice and urgency to mainstream America to say, hey, there's a problem. Why must we have a string of murders and names that become famous because they were unjustly leveled and reduced to no breath by those sworn to protect? Why must they become famous because they're dead? I don't understand that. That is not the legacy, should not be the legacy of this nation. George Floyd should not be famous because he's dead. We are better than this. What do you think? We are better than this. What do you think? I want you to start a conversation. Add your comments here. This is part one of this. I hope that you have understood my comments coming from a place of love. I'm not angry. I'm not angry at anybody. I love those who legitimately go into law enforcement. Because of them, we actually have a civil society. We want the good officers to feel that we respect and appreciate them. But we want the bad officers to be held accountable. And the way to do that, one way to do that, is to have a body cam as mandatory equipment and part of a review, their professional review, their compensation review, their annual performance review, their ability to get a promoted review. Every officer should have a mandatory body camera as a regulation for doing their job, and mandatory requirement and review after every shift, period, full stop, right? So that we can get the trust back, right? And we've got to reimagine in the 21st century what democracy looks like. We've got to reimagine what success and failure looks like. We got to stop accepting that wealth inequality and income inequality gaping is somehow okay. Stop accepting that it's okay to have wealth only at the top and poverty only, or that concentrates itself at the bottom and never changes. That somehow this is acceptable. No, this used to be different in this country. You came in here as an immigrant. You looked at Ellis Island. Ellis Island. You looked up at the Statue of Liberty. You looked at an office building and said, "I'm going to live the American dream." And within a generation, you were not just walking past the office building. You were owning one. Okay, you were somebody who came from nothing and created something because this nation gave you a shot. And all too often now, you started poverty and you ended poverty, and that is not acceptable. And then it ends up in a situation where people are rioting in the streets, black and white, because they're just had enough. They're fed up. 400 years from slavery to Jim Crow to ineffective education and ineffective preparation and ineffective inclusion in a democracy rooted in capitalism means that people have very little optionality. And then when they think the law enforcement is not fair for them either, or the Justice Department, it means not justice, but just us, what do we expect? So look, we can't change what's happened up and now. We can only change from where we are going forward. And I'm telling you that something positive happened in South Central LA after the worst urban riot in U.S. history, the Rodney King riots, which was the founding of Operation Hope, which is now in 22 states, has 153 locations, has served almost 4.5 million people, that's helping with COVID-19 right now in a big way, that has 30,000 volunteers, are in 4,000 schools, that's responsible for several pieces of federal policy, that's worked with several U.S. presidents from both political parties, and is leaning in right now as part of this solution. And we understand this compact between the community, the government, and the private sector, and the faith community that has to happen in order to provide uplift for those who don't have a voice. Something positive can come out of this, but we've got to be thoughtful and intelligent about it. We have to find a solution from the neck up, not the shoulders down. This will only get you but so far. But this will take you to the moon and back. My apologies and my heart condolences to the family of George Floyd. You will not be forgotten. Your life will be remembered, and we will make it right in this country. Let me know what you think. Put your comments below. Let's come up with some ideas of what the federal. I told you the White House just sent me a text while I was sitting here. What should we be saying to them? What should we be saying to Congress? What should we be saying to the Senate? What should be in a Marshall Plan, a new Marshall Plan for today? Let's not just focus on the pain. Let's focus on the promise. Let's just focus on the failure here. But let's focus on the function, the necessary function of our democracy and our government, and what we demand, lovingly demand of our leaders to do better. To quote my mentor, Ambassador Andrew Young, this is not my country. This is my country. And I demand that she lives up to her creed. John Bryant, I'm out.